Welcome to Manifest Live. This is the third message in a series that we've begun called Stress Less. And in this series, we're learning a powerful metaphor that's going to help us thrive in the present moment. And the metaphor, in case you haven't heard it yet, is time travel. In other words, I'm referring to our brain's ability to jump from the present moment into thinking about the past or thinking about the future and then back into the present moment, just like a time machine. Now, what we've also recognized is that the research shows that the more we do this, the less happy we are. And that's a problem because the research also showed that the average person spends 46.9% of their waking hours time traveling. They didn't use that word, but they talked about the fact that we spend 46.9% of our waking hours, our mental energies, thinking about things that aren't actually happening around us. So the more we do it, the less happy we are because you can only live in the present moment, right? You can only live in the present moment. Now, the solution might appear to be just stop doing it. But the fact is we can't stop doing it because this is how our brains work, right? They're always jumping back and forth. There's a reason we do it so often. And the second thing, beyond it being a God-given faculty, is the fact that in order to thrive in the present moment or be at peace with the present, you have to be at peace with your past and your future. So we have to learn to go there. We've got to learn to address our past in a healthy way, our future in a healthy way, so that we can thrive in the present moment. And then before I get into our message for today, I'm going to do a bit of a recap because some of you may have missed the first two of what I've been calling the 5 indisputable axioms of time travel. Now, these came out of a lot of research. One day, as I was thinking about this time travel metaphor, I actually started watching movies about time travel and realized that there's a lot of common threads that run through these movies. That the characters, there's certain rules that they must follow when they're time traveling. And if they don't, they will screw up the present moment, which is a beautiful metaphor for exactly how our brains and our lives play out. These are so true to life. So as I was doing the research, again, 5 indisputable axioms of time travel kind of emerged, and I want to share them with you today. We actually covered the first 2 last week, so let me just remind you what they are. The first one is time travel on purpose. This might seem so obvious, but the fact is that the studies show, the research shows that most of us, when we leave the present moment to think about the past or the future, we're not conscious of it. Our minds are just wandering out into left field and back again. And so we've learned, don't just let your mind wander. Take your thoughts captive. Take charge of your thoughts. No one else will. In fact, if you don't do it, the devil will take captive your thoughts, which you really, really don't want. We'll get into that in a little bit later. Now, the second axiom is built on the first axiom, and it goes like this. Time travel for the right reasons. In other words, we ended off with this beautiful question, this powerful question. If I'm taking my thoughts captive, I'm not just wandering into the future or the past, if I'm about to go there, I should ask myself, will going there enable me to thrive in the present moment and then build a better future? If it won't, don't go there, right? Like, why would you go there? Why would you screw up your present moment or do something that's a complete waste of time? So those are the first 2 axioms. If you missed that, please go back and look at it from last week. They're so, so powerful. This week's axiom is equally powerful, but first I want to get into something that the Apostle Paul shared, one of the early followers of Jesus. I quote him a lot. That's because he wrote a good chunk of the New Testament. But he wrote this to these believers in Jesus who were struggling with their minds and their thoughts and how that all works because they had been taught to think a certain way. Their minds worked a certain way, and yet the way they were thinking was destructive. And so in Christ, through faith in Christ, he's saying this is how you ought to think. And this is what he said. He said, be very careful then how you live. Not as unwise, but as wise, And there's the phrase, making the most of every opportunity. Why? Because the days are evil. They're screwed up. Now, what you need to know is that probably a better translation of that phrase, making the most of every opportunity, is actually redeeming or reclaiming the time. The old version, like the King James version, the old school, actually says redeeming the time. This is because the word time is actually in the Greek, in that phrase. So the idea is, remember last week, we talked about how if we don't capture our thoughts, the enemy will. They will roll downhill. And now what he's saying is redeem those thoughts, redeem your time. See, we often think of time management as something that is only daytimer related. So I'm going to do this from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and 4 o'clock I'm going to do this. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to walk around the house. And we think this is time management, and it is. But the Apostle Paul would also say, let's start with how you manage time in here, right? How you handle past, present, and future in here. In the New Testament, there were two primary words that they used to designate time. One is chronos, which is the ticking clock, and the other one was kairos, which refers to strategic time or eras or seasons, special segments of time. So here he's saying, you gotta buy back, you gotta redeem, you gotta reclaim the time. Why? Because it's already going downhill. If you don't take your thoughts captive, your time will get away on you. Your handling of time will actually ruin your life. So as we look at the next axiom, let's learn how to do that more effectively. Here's axiom number 3. Axiom number 3 is be careful with your souvenirs. Be careful with your souvenirs. How many of you have gone on family trips or did that growing up? My family, we would go camping in the summers, all kinds of stuff because my dad was a teacher. And so we would pack up our stuff every 3 years and do a monster trip. Like these were epic trips, like all the way to the East Coast, you know, Prince Edward Island or something on the edge. Or we went down to New York one year, California, that kind of thing. So we'd take 2.5 weeks in the car. We would camp it. Later, we'd be dragging one of those pop-up trailers. It was a little bit better, but it was so much fun, so much fun. But I remember back in the day, I only had an allowance. I didn't have a job, right? This is before I had my paper route. And I would save up my pennies with my allowance, just a couple of bucks a week until we got to go on that trip. And my goal was like, if I could just raise $20 for this trip. Yeah, I know. $20 for this trip, and then I could buy the coolest souvenir. And then I would go through the trip. We'd get to a location. I go, do I buy the little train or do I wait to see what is going to be on the shelves in San Francisco? Right? You have to kind of gauge your time and your money. Well, the best souvenir probably I ever bought, because I'm still using it today, and I'm going to refer to it, is this snake. It is so cool. Can you get a look at that? That is so cool. I got this sucker at Wall Drug, I think it's South Dakota. An amazing little armpit of a town, but they've got this great thing going for tourists. And I bought this as plaster. You can see on the back here, I got it for $2.79. $2.79. Got this thing, and it was like that was really expensive at the time. But I remember buying it. I remember standing in line, and I want you to notice something. I'm smiling just looking at it. I remember that family trip. I remember how hot it was. I was so proud that I got this thing. It's been on my desk off and on throughout the years. Now, I want you to think about souvenirs, because again, this is the third axiom of time travel. What is a souvenir? What's the purpose of a souvenir? I'll tell you, it's right here. The purpose of a souvenir is to transport the sights, sounds, images, and emotions of the past into the present. That's what it does. When I pick this up, I smile. I feel my happiness rise. Why? Because as I look at this snake, I know it sounds weird, but as I look at this thing, it's hypnotizing me. No, as I look at this thing, I start to remember the past. The happiness that I felt starts to come into the present moment because of the souvenir. It's doing its job, okay? So when it comes to time travel, whenever we jump from the present to the past or from the present to the future, the same thing is happening. We are time traveling, and the souvenir principle kicks in. Here's what I mean. Every time we time travel, we bring back souvenirs into the present moment. It's so interesting. When we think about the past and we ruminate on something that's happened, we think of that as purely a mental exercise, right? I'm going to think about this, and I'm just thinking, and then I'm going to think about the future, thinking. I'm thinking about the future, and as though it's completely like sterile, like nothing's happening. But what we need to remember is that thoughts are wrapped in emotions. So when you think about something and your thoughts occur to you and memories come back to you, the souvenir effect comes into play, and you bring things with you into the present moment that weren't there before you time traveled. This is so important, which leads to the second principle of when we time travel. And that is that what we bring back always changes how we feel in the present moment. Always, always, always. So if you think about, when I think about this snake, I feel awesome. When I think about getting beat up on the schoolyard, I don't feel awesome. In the present moment, even though I'm not in the past, I'm present, the emotions of the past become the present emotions in my experience because of this souvenir principle. So important. But there's more. Number 3, we almost always bring back more than we intended. Hey, when I was on those family trips and I had $20 to spend and I kept it in a little wallet, penny by penny, that was it. That was all I could spend for the entire trip. I'd be like, please, I'm running out of money. I want to buy a Mickey Mouse shirt. Well, you shouldn't have spent it on the rattlesnake, right? This is what happens in real life. But when it comes to time travel, we always bring back more than we anticipated. Always, always, always. It's like a trip to Costco. And I don't mean now. Now we're coming back with a huge bucket loads of stuff, right? Because we're stocking up for 2 weeks or something in the middle of the COVID crisis. But back in the day, like you walk in minding your own business, and your full intention is to buy a bottle of ketchup and maybe some fresh hot dog buns and some hot dogs. In, out, surgical strike, that's it. And oh, look at that, the cereal's on sale. Oh man, you throw that in the cart and boom, chicka pop is on sale. Oh my goodness, that's $2 off per bag. Then do you just get one on sale? Oh no, my friend, you get 2, you get 3, and you put them in the cart. Before you know it, you are walking out of Costco with 9 carts of food and 4 Sherpas along with you to, navigate this thing back to the parking lot. The point is that when you time travel, you think that all I'm going to do is think about the future and worry about the future a little bit, and you come back into the present moment, dragging anxiety with you, and suddenly you've got way more emotion in the present moment than the present moment calls for. Why? Because it's not coming from the present moment. It's not coming from the present moment. I'm going to get to that in a minute. Here's the number 4. Number 4, most of what we bring back makes the present worse. Most of what we bring back makes the present worse. The reason I'm saying that, again, is not just my opinion. It's because the research shows that the more we time travel, the less happy we are. Why? Because we tend to go places and use our minds in such a way that the souvenirs we're bringing back is ruining our present moment, the less happy we are. Now let's put all of this back together. Okay? You're sitting on your porch. You're sipping a glass of lemonade. Ice cubes are jingling around in there. You're having this great old time. The air is warm. The breeze is cool. The sun is shining. The birds are flying by. They're not pooping on your car. It's a glorious day. And somehow, sitting there in this paradise, you are racked with rage or anger or anxiety. Why? Because you're time traveling. See, you're ruining the present moment. How many of you know that how we feel in the present moment often has very little to do with what's actually happening in the present moment? This is really important because when we feel anxious, we tend to blame it on someone else or the current circumstances, when actually what's happening is we're being triggered, we're time traveling, dragging that emotion into the present moment, and It's just overwhelming. It's too much. Too much. Do you see how these concepts are coming together? Now, the question you might be asking then is, why do we do this? Like if it hurts us so often to go back into the past and into the future, why do we even do that? That kind of thing. There's a writer and philosopher named Henry David Thoreau, and he says this. He says, time is but the stream I go a-fishing in. Why do our brains and our minds leave the present moment to think about the past? Why do they go into the future to think about the future when so often of the time it's negative and we end up dragging these souvenirs back into the present moment and ruin the present even though there's nothing wrong with the present? Because we're fishing. We're fishing. We're looking for something. Like we're always looking for something. You know what we're doing? And this is why we time travel. This is why we do it. Number one, because we're not at peace with something negative. One of the reasons your mind leaves the present moment, and maybe the predominant reason, is because you're not happy with something in the past, or it continues to bother you. What's wrong? Oh, I don't know. This is a meeting I had today. It's nothing. But it's something because the present moment is ruined by something that happened 4 hours ago or 4 years ago or 40 years ago. Or we are constantly thinking about what's going on. What about that meeting? And when will our business reopen? And will I get rehired? And no matter how many times we go there, we continue to bring anxiety and anger and resentment back. And then we think about how they mistreated us. And we're back and forth and back and forth. Why? Because we're not at peace with our past and our future. We're fishing. We're looking for some handle to put these things to rest, but we can't seem to make it work. We're trying to fix something that's broken about our future, the way we're seeing it, or about our past, and it's just not working. That's the first reason why we time travel. The second reason our brains time travel so often is that we're trying to draw strength from something positive. Like I was doing before. I grabbed this snake. I'm looking at it. I'm feeling happier just holding it in my hands. This is one of the reasons why we remember last summer at the lake, how awesome that was. And remember we did the basketball and it hit Jenny in the head and she's like, that wasn't funny. No, that was awesome. And we're just laughing to get right. Why are we doing that? We're trying to draw power from the positivity of that moment. And why do we look into the future to do that? Well, because we're thinking, oh my goodness, Christmas is going to be so awesome because Uncle Jake's coming and he always does this thing with the magic tricks and it's going to be so fun. And you start to oh, I can hardly wait. Now my present moment is better than it was a minute ago. A minute ago, I was just sitting here on my deck enjoying the lemonade. Now, I'm also reminiscing about the lake, and I've pulled that emotion into the moment. I've been thinking about the future, what's going to happen in Christmas, and I just feel all warm and fuzzy inside because I've done what time travel is meant for. I've mined power and joy and positive stuff from my memories. These are the reasons why we go fishing, to fix something bad or to draw power from something good, right? Those are the reasons. Now, let's get into time travel number 2, because we've done this before, but now with the lens of souvenirs, the souvenir principle, time travel axiom number 2, time travel for the right reasons, it becomes so much more clear. So now when we're thinking about the right reasons, what we're actually talking about is it's time travel only if we can put something bad to rest or draw power from something good in order to thrive in the present and build a better future. Does that make sense? So if thinking about the past isn't going to help me put something to rest, put something to right, or the future, or if it's not going to help me draw power from those things, then don't do it. Then it's the wrong reason, okay? So that's how this comes together. Now, I don't know about you, but there's something a little bit anxiety producing, counterproductive about what's happening. Because the more that I talk about these principles and these axioms, like they're really familiar to me. They're like, I'm a fish like in the water, okay? But for you, you're probably like, this is getting complicated. This is getting complicated. Before it was one thing. Is it good or is it bad? Now he's adding a list. And yes, there's only 2 things in the list plus a closing, but still, it's getting more complicated. And you're starting to think, how can I ever possibly do this? And I can totally relate. There's this great place in the Old Testament where the writer, I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Solomon, that's who he is. I had to go back into my memory. I had to go back into the past to pull that memory into the future. Bing, I got it. Now I'm happier. See, I access something and it's helpful. And do you see? We're doing it all the time. So King Solomon in the Old Testament wrote this book called Ecclesiastes. And in this book, he goes on these rants about life and either how it sucks or how it's awesome, usually how it sucks. And in this book, there's a rant that I want to read to you because it's so important. He says, there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. And then he goes on. And I just got to say, like, songs have been written about this, and they're always so cheerful. For everything, turn. You don't recognize the song because I can't sing it. But there's poetry written about this. But I just want to read this the way I think it should be read. Okay? There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones, a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search, a time to give up, a time to keep, a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent, a time to speak, a time to love, a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. I have seen the burden God has laid upon the human race. See, my question is I know there's a time for everything. My question is, what time is it? How am I supposed to know if it's time to go fix something in the future or the past? How do I know when it's time to draw power from it or whether I'm allowed to do that? How do I know what time it is? You know what we need? We need a guide. We need a time travel guide. And don't look at me. Don't look at me. I see you looking at me. I'm not a time travel master. Like, I got some stuff under my belt. I got some principles, I'm getting pretty good at this. I'm doing this stuff, but I also suck at it sometimes. Like, what we need someone who's got this thing down, like a time travel master, like a time travel lord, but not like, Doctor Who, not that kind of thing. I'm talking about someone who's like been there, done that, like somebody who's got this thing down, knows what it's like to be human and wrestle with this thing, but has perspective that no human could have. You know where I'm going with this? We need someone who's the same yesterday, today, and forever. We need someone maybe who's Alpha and Omega. We need Jesus to be our time travel master because Jesus is the one. Guys, he understands. He understands the big picture of eternity. He gets how the eons fit together. He sees where the future is going. Past, present, and future is all present to him as the Alpha and Omega, the King of Kings. But that's not why he's most qualified, believe it or not, to be our time travel master. One of the reasons why he's most qualified is because he became human. He laid aside the privileges of deity and lived fully as a human being, 100% human and 100% God at the same time. So he walked through life. And he nailed it. He never sinned. He never screwed up, which means he never screwed up time travel to the past or the future. And he was able to thrive in the present moment. This is why I want to follow Jesus. This is why I want him to be my guide. So time travel axiom number 5 is choose your guides wisely. Now, some of you astute people in there, or maybe you're, I don't know, just a little bit anal retentive. Maybe you've noticed that I skipped one. We did 1, we did 2, we did 3, we did 5. Why have you? Because we're time travelers. We can just go back and do number 4. In fact, the time travel axiom number 5, you need that one in order to do number 4 properly. So the number 5 is choose your guides wisely. Now, some of you might be thinking, I don't want a guide. I don't like the spirituality stuff. I can just do this on my own. I don't want a guide. You gave me the axioms. I'll just hang out to you, show me number 4, and I'll do 1 to 4 without number 5. I got this. Now that I got the mental construct, but I'm telling you, if you could have, you would have by now. I hate to break it to you. Because number 5, choose your guides wisely, is the one that empowers all the other 4. Right? It's absolutely true. You need a guide. Now, some of you were saying, I don't need a guide. I'm just going to do this thing on myself. Really? Really? Well, remember this verse I've been talking about? And if you haven't been tuning in, Jesus says it this way. He says, the thief, that's the devil, comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. But I, Jesus, have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So my question to you is your present moment characterized by joy and peace and life and thriving? Or would you say that your thoughts tend to roll downhill into places they shouldn't go? Do you find yourself struggling with frustration so that your own thoughts are sabotaging your life? So the enemy can actually say that he's stealing, killing, and destroying from you without having to raise a finger. All he's got to do is push you a little bit to time travel into your past, drag that stuff back, ruin the present, stress about it, and then obsess about the future, ruin that by worrying about it, and he just sits back and watches us go. That was a long rant. But my point is, we need a guide. And notice I'm saying choose your guides wisely because you're already being guided. You're already being guided. And the quality of your thoughts and your peace, your level of peace inside is largely an indicator of who your guide might be. So I'm asking you to trust Jesus. Why? Because he handled past, present, and future like nobody else. I'm going to show you, just as we close here, a window into Jesus as time travel master. I look at this and I go, wow. So here's the deal. You and I, most of the time, we're nice people. Most of the time, we're like so patient, we're so kind, right? If life is going well, we can keep our thoughts pretty much on the rails. Maybe they bounce around a little bit like a bowling ball with a 5-year-old with the guardrails on. Maybe, but we get there, it's fine. But when you put the pressure on, when life starts to heat up, when you can't go outside, you can only go shopping once a week, and you can't see your friends and all this stuff, the pressure starts to mount, and the pressure starts to get to us. Then what starts to come out when we're squeezed, when we're crushed, when we're destroyed, when we're under pressure really shows us what we're made of. Well, Jesus had a day like that. He had lots of days like that, but this day, it was like a day before he got arrested, after which he would be tortured and killed on a cross. This is what happened. This is crazy stuff. Look at this. It was just before the Passover festival, and Jesus knew that the hour had come for him to leave this world and go to the Father. So he knows that he's about to get arrested, tortured and crucified in the most horrific and painful death anyone has ever experienced. Why? Because in that death, he also took upon himself all the darkness and suffering of the world so that he could put an end to it in his own death and his own resurrection. So in this moment, he knows it is coming and it will be hard. This is what happens next. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So here's a little bookend. The writer's saying here, Jesus loved us the whole way through. Didn't matter what kind of day he was having. Didn't matter what the pressures were from the outside, what the opposition was like, what yesterday was like, what was looming tomorrow. He always loves us the same. He loved us in the beginning. He loved us till the end. And then he starts to tell a story about what Jesus did on this night he was betrayed. The evening meal was in progress, and the devil had already prompted Judas, the son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Now, what we also know is that the devil actually came into Judas. So picture this. This is the scene for the Last Supper. This is where the Last Supper is going to happen. They've gathered in the upper room. The disciples are all lounging around Jesus. The devil himself is present in Judas. Do you think Jesus knew that? Oh, I'm sure he could feel it with every fiber in his being. There's something off, right? There's this darkness, this coldness in the room. He's about to be betrayed. All of this stuff is looming. Can you imagine the tension? The disciples kind of don't know what's going on. They're laughing, they're drinking, they're having a good old time. Judas is in the corner, hoping nobody notices that he's nervous and the bead of sweat is. And Jesus has the presence of mind. Look at this. Look what happens next. Jesus knew that the Father had put all things under his power. That's present tense. He knows that in this moment, God has put everything, the Father's put everything in my power, under my feet. Okay? That's present now. And that he had come from God. He was at peace with his past and was returning to God. He's at peace with his future. And so he got up from the meal, took off his outer clothing, wrapped a towel around his waist like a servant would. And after that, he poured water into a basin, began to wash his disciples' feet. If you knew you were on death row, if you knew you had just a few hours left, if you were looking around the table and you'd spent years with these guys looking, oh, Andrew, Peter, oh man, such a good guy. And you realize this is the last time we're going to be together, the Last Supper. After this, nothing will be the same. After this, Judas will go off and hang himself. After this, I will be captured, I will be tried, and I will be crucified. And I will suffer the most horrific death. But somehow in this moment, he's so at peace with the fact that God's put everything under his power in the present. He's at peace that he came from God, he's going to God, past and future, that he can be fully present in the present moment to love and serve the ones that he cares about most. Don't you want that? Don't you want to be free of your past so it doesn't keep clouding your present and getting projected onto the ones you love? Don't you want to be free of your obsession with the future and the anxiety that produces? Then we're going to need Jesus as our guide. He's showing us right here. And he did this as a man, fully dependent on God. So he's the pioneer here. It's not just God going, I shall empower you and you. This is God taking on flesh, going, I get it. I've been there. I've done this. And I'm going to show you how to do it too. I will be your guide. I will be your guide. Over the next 2 weeks, we're going to talk about this. We're going to let Jesus as our guide help us get unstuck from the past and unstuck from the future so that we can navigate past, present, and future without getting stuck so that we can live and thrive in the present moment. That's what we're going to do. So here's what I want you to do now as we close. I would love it if you would make Jesus your guide. If you want to ask him, Lord Jesus, come and guide me. Maybe you're not ready to give your life to him yet, but if you've given your life to him, don't just ask him for guidance. Say, Jesus, be my guide. Show me, draw me, walk with me, coach me through this. I need to get a handle on my past. I need to be set free from that stuff. I need to be set free from my future. Would you please just show me? In fact, let's do that right now. I kind of just did it. Would you bow your heads with me and pray? Lord Jesus, thank you that you are the master, the Lord of the past, the Lord of the present, the Lord of the future. Thank you that you're not just the God who's the same yesterday, today, and forever in some cosmic, out there kind of way, but you took on flesh. You lived this life. You saw how difficult it is to navigate past, present, and future when you're so tied to this mortal existence. And yet you did it perfectly. So would you come and guide us now? And if there's anyone here today and watching, or even months later now as we're doing this online, who has never given their lives to you, may this be the moment where they go, it's enough. I've been putting this off. Jesus, I'm sorry for making a mess of my life. Thank you for dying on the cross for my sins. Please take my life and lead me from now on. In Jesus' name, amen. Tune in on Thursday as we're going to do our time travel boot camp, episode 3. I'm taking the principles of what we learn here on Sunday mornings and fleshing them out in real life in a Bible study on the life of Joseph in the Old Testament. And it's super, super practical. So make sure you tune in Thursdays. That's 10:30 a.m. You can also catch it once it's uploaded and stuff. And then next Sunday, we're going to start letting Jesus be our guide into the past, into the future, so we can thrive in the present. So good, so good. Have an amazing day.